Afternoon. My name is Corey Hart. I am the Senior Product Manager at RBI. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to go ahead and dive in to the presentation. Okay, so SmartCharts Pro launched about 4 or 5 months ago. It was an upgrade, a very important upgrade off of what we had previously in RBI Expert. We went from 10 metrics to 36 metrics. We upgraded the user interface. We added an Explore section, which I'll get into. We now have legal subdivisions. A lot of exciting things. I'll hit on a lot of them here today. But if you have any questions as I'm going through this, feel free to type into the questions box on the web GoToMeeting panel, and I'll either stop answering them there if I can. Otherwise, I'll get to them at the end. So to change location, so the default obviously is the Mid-Atlantic region. This covers the core counties within MRS. We just call it Mid-Atlantic to be a little more user-friendly to our customers and customers who may not even know what MRS is. But for purposes of this first part of the presentation, I'll just jump to Northern Virginia. Once I change my location and I pick it from the box, for instance, I can start typing in Fairfax County and see all the applicable locations within that, all the way down to the subdivision level. But as I change my location, the entire application will update with stats applicable to the location that I've changed to. The first tab is the dashboard. So this is a nice overview of whatever location you're in. I'm in Northern Virginia, but you'll likely want to get into your zip code or your county or even your legal subdivision, depending on the scenario. Each of these market gauges gives you a lot of information in a very little space. So closed sales, for instance, here I can tell the most recent month's number of sales, 2483, how that compares to the 5-year average number of sales for September, which is where the color breaks. And if I hover over or look in the legend, I can see that that's the 5-year average is 2447. So I can see even though we may be down year over year from last September, we're still above the 5-year September average. We're not at the 5-year max, which is the boundary on the right, and we're well above the 5-year min, which is the boundary on the left. So in that one space, I can tell the 5-year min, 5-year max, the 5-year average, and that month. So we can see for Northern Virginia, active listings, as has been highly publicized, active listings came roaring back. That should be taken with a grain of salt. And when I get into the charts themselves, you'll see that yes, they're up from last year, and they may be above the 5-year average, but we're nowhere near the historical highs for active inventory. And that's why we're still a seller's market in the Northern Virginia area with 3.9 months of supply. Granted, that's at the 5-year max for September. The 5-year average is 3.2 for this time of year, and we're well above the 2.5 months, which is the 5-year low for September. But it's still a seller's market. So months of supply basically is saying if no new listings came on the market in the months ahead, and we just looked at the active inventory at month's end, based off of the 12-month sales pace over the last 12 months, how long would it take for all active listings to sell? And so anything below 4 to 6 is generally considered a balanced market. Anything lower than 4 months of supply is considered a seller's market. Anything higher than 6 months is more of a buyer's market. And so that months of supply, which I'll get into again when we look at the charts, is a very important metric to keep in mind when you're either evaluating, a certain zip code you might want to target for farming. If there's an option of 5 or 6 zip codes or subdivisions near you, and one has, 9 months of supply, this doesn't tend to happen to have that much diversity within a local area of supply and demand. But look for those that have the lowest months of supply, and if you can grab a listing there, you're in good shape. That months of supply drives prices. It drives down DOM, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely, and if I didn't do a good enough job explaining what months of supply is, definitely hit that definitions page to learn more about that. If I scroll over, I can see more metrics, number of new listings. New listing activity has really skyrocketed this year compared to last year. We're at a 5-year high. Median sale price is also at a 5-year high. The median list price for active listings is above the 5-year average, but not at the 5-year high. And as I scroll over, I can see where these metrics compare to recent history. Any of these can be embedded on your website. I'll get more into embedding at the end when we're looking at the charts, but if you click on the embed, I can see, I can basically pick the metric that I'd like to embed, and at this point you can only embed one at a time, and there isn't any flexibility on the size of the embeds, but it's great for a right rail. We've seen a lot of customers that stick them in their right rail of their website, or stack them horizontally, across the board. I actually have an example of one that we've done here. Basically, you'll grab this, copy and paste this code onto your website's HTML view, and once you pasted it, if you do the update automatically, every month when we get new stats in, your website will also get those new stats automatically. Magic. So that's the market gauges. Great place. Once the new stats come in on the 10th of the month, I always go. I know we're going to be writing our DC Metro, Baltimore Metro market reports. I wrote a report for Dulles. The first place I go is look at those market gauges to see how things are playing out. Spotlight's pretty straightforward, just the key metrics. YOY means year over year, and MOM means month over month. So that's the percent change in this column. So the percent change in median sale price in this September versus September 2013. It's basically flattening out, and it has been flattening out for several months now as inventories come back, at least in Northern Virginia. MOM, month over month, we tend not to even talk much about month over month change due to the seasonality of the market. We can tell you that once we hit November, prices are going to go down, sales are going to go down, listing activity is going to go down. So doing that month over month percent change really isn't all that meaningful in most cases, unless you're comparing to the 5 or 10 year average November to December change, for instance. But it's there if you want it. The contract snapshot, you can see contract activity has slipped some and sales have flattened out. But that's just a quick view of contract activity. This is an exciting section. This is the Explore section within the dashboard. So if I'm on the regional level, so if I'm on Northern Virginia or Baltimore Metro or DC Metro, then I can compare all the counties that fall within those regions, all the cities within those regions, and all the zip codes within those regions for a variety of metrics. So this is a great stop, especially when you're looking at, let's say you're on a county page. I'll go ahead and jump to a county page. So let's jump to Fairfax County. The default for this is for cities. Cities a lot of times don't have, obviously, as high a volume as a county, and especially when you jump into zip codes or even into legal subdivisions. I'll go ahead and jump into legal subdivisions to show you what I'm talking about. So there's two sections. There's the most recent month, which is September, and so September 2014, September 2013, and the percent change. Because of the low volume in most subdivisions within any area, these numbers are going to be highly volatile. But this year-to-date column generally makes for a more meaningful trend when you're looking at subdivisions, because now we're looking at sales data over at this point 9 consecutive months. So it's an aggregated metric that you can compare this year versus last year and have more meaningful stats. I can change that. I can sort any of these to see what's the most expensive subdivision year to date, or I can sort these by percent change to see which subdivisions have had the highest appreciation in median sales price. There's going to be a few, up at the top that are huge changers, and that may be because they only have 2 or 3 sales. But in general, when you get down to all of these different subdivisions, you can see those that are exceeding the county's average, and I'm still scrolling to see where the county is. So the county's sitting at flat, basically at 0.5% year-over-year increase in median sales price. Any of the subdivisions that are below this are basically underperforming versus the county at large. Any above are, exceeding the county average at large. I can change this to median days on market. Sorry for scrolling so quickly, but I need to get back up to the top. There's a lot of subdivisions. I can change this to any of these other metrics. So number of sales, new pending activity, new listing activity, sold price to original list price ratio, median days on market, which I'll turn on now. So this is saying half the homes sold in more than this number of days, half sold in less. So if we look at this year to date, 2014, we can see those legal subdivisions that are selling fastest and those that are taking longer to sell. And so if I'm, if I happen to be selling a home in Penderbrook in Fairfax, I can use that knowledge to say, look, homes here year to date are selling in 11 days. That's no different than last year, and that's faster than the county aggregate overall. All of these, it's a sort of an ugly, huge list of subdivisions. You might want to stick at the city level or zip code level, but however you have this viewed, I can then export that into Excel and basically from there do any other charts or further manipulation just based off of if I'm big on Excel. So I'll usually do that when I'm writing our DC Metro or Baltimore Metro or Loudoun County reports that we also put together. I'm solely using SmartCharts Pro when I'm doing this. So that's Explore. Again, you can dive into comparing cities. You can look at all cities throughout the entirety of MRIS if you're on the Mid-Atlantic level up here. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to Northern Virginia, and we'll dive into the Charts tab. Make sure we don't have any questions. Okay. Okay, so on the Charts tab, this is really the meat and potatoes of SmartCharts Pro. Granted, we do have a report section if you're in a hurry and you just want to type out or print out a quick PDF that'll have your name and contact information to leave at take it with you as to complement your listing presentation. The report section, you can use that. The chart section is really where you can get the most in-depth type of analysis, and so there's a lot of metrics in here. Our recommendation is, over time, try to pick up more and more metrics and what they mean and how to use them, but nail 3 or 4 of these metrics and what they mean, and really that's a big thing just to help enhance your brand when you're talking with a potential client or customer. Just to say, look, I'm paying attention to these trends. They may not be seeing this, but from your competition. So it's something, if you jump in there with an iPad or send them a couple of charting examples, that just really helps to land the confidence of that potential client. The default here is just 12 months of sales, and the default is market activity. You can see over on this right side, these are all of my facets. We call them facets. They're basically property characteristics or listing characteristics that you can dive further into. So for example, I can switch this to pricing trends and look at median sold price for attached townhouses versus how much it costs for condos and detached homes. turn off all, and we can see, if I'm in a zip code, this is good intelligence just to give an overview of that zip code with your client to say, if you're looking definitely at this zip code, here's what you're looking at. Half the detached homes here, we're in Northern Virginia, but say we're in a zip code, half the homes are selling for $507,000 or more. If that's out of your price range, then let's go ahead and take a look at the townhouses, which might be more in your budget, and $375K is the median, or I'll go all the way down to condos. Another thing that you can do within this, and I actually use this with a buddy of mine, I mentioned this on a previous webinar, but I was at AOL before coming here and had some mutual friends, etc. And a buddy of mine actually went and joined AOL. I'm familiar with Loudoun County. I live out there. And he was looking at buying it just basically as starter home, just a townhouse, had a somewhat limited budget, and prices are obviously very high there. One thing that you can do pretty quickly is give your customer a lay of the land, by saying, okay, you're looking for a townhouse. Let's compare locations. So Northern Virginia overall, the median sold price for townhouses is $375K. Well, I know, and you in this hypothetical would know, since you're the agent close by, which areas might be a decent commute. Not that there are any good commutes in Northern Virginia. Let's turn on Aldi, which is sort of near enough to AOL, Aldi, Virginia. South Riding, Virginia, which is a terrible 606 commute there, but still not too far. Ashburn, we can pick a zip code within Ashburn, maybe 20147. I don't know if they have, they've got townhouses. And Centerville, maybe Fairfax County schools are more meaningful. So Centerville's in Fairfax County. That's not that bad of a commute, so we can turn on Centerville, Virginia. So now we can see the most affordable place for townhomes that are, and this is just an example. Obviously, there are more neighborhoods and zip codes and subdivisions to look at. So let's say that he had a budget of $350K. Turning this on, and we actually looked at this, not these exact locations, but here we can see, Aldi, Virginia, $403K. South Riding, $380K. 20147, which is in Ashburn, is $367K. In Centerville, Virginia, surprisingly, because it's in Fairfax County, but it's actually more affordable in terms of townhouses. So maybe, that would lead him more towards some of the older townhouses that are available in Centerville, Virginia. We can switch this, even though I have all these things turned on. So I've got townhouses turned on, I've got locations turned on that are relevant, and I obviously have this metric turned on. I can change this over to price per square foot to see what kind of value you get for how much you get for your dollar. So if we switch this over to median sold price per square foot, it kind of flips. So even though Centerville was the most affordable in terms of median sale price, so how much townhouses cost, it's actually the most expensive in terms of how much townhouse you get for your dollar. So how can that be? Well, I happen to know the area, so I know that that the townhouses in Aldi, Virginia, some of the newer townhouses, they're huge. They're the size of some detached homes in Centerville, where I grew up. So even though Aldi had the more expensive townhouses, you're actually getting more for your money, whereas Centerville, which are the most affordable of these that we're looking at, actually you're paying more per square foot because they're the older townhouses, they're the smaller townhouses, etc. So not to keep going on that point, but there's a lot of flexibility that you can do just within this charting space to change your metrics. I can flip this over to Detach Tall and see if it holds true, and yeah, it kind of does. Not quite as stark, but basically I could continue. I could add 10 more locations and compare those over time. I can change this to just show quarters, get a little more information. And we can see that all of these are more affordable in terms of detached homes than Fairfax County overall, or Northern Virginia overall. So that's a long way to sort of explain just the basics of these charts, of the things around these charts in a given scenario. I'm going to step back and we'll look at the seasonality of the market and how that's an important thing for us to understand, and well, mainly for you all to understand as realtors and brokers. And it's especially important for you to impart that knowledge on your buyers and sellers. So we'll go ahead and switch this back out. We'll switch this back out to months, closed sales, and I'm going to remove all of, I'm just going to get back just to Northern Virginia, reset the thing, all home types, and we'll look at this. So we're looking at number of sales over 6 years. We can go all the way back to look at 10 years. This is new. In RV Expert, we can only go back 5 years. So here we can see last year was basically the high water mark of late in the last 5 years in terms of sales. We're nowhere near where we were pre-bubble or bubble pre-crisis. That is not necessarily a bad thing. This high speculation, et cetera, and we know what happened there. But this is a good view of the seasonality of the market. I can change this to look at just the line view, just the same data, just plotted differently. I can also turn on additional metrics like closed sales versus active listings. So like I said, these sales were skyrocketing here, but they're dwarfed by active inventory once that sales pipeline kind of shut down a bit. And so we can see just how far Northern Virginia's come from that, from the active listings we had when everything stalled. Another view of inventory and sort of the seasonality, or actually the historical context of the inventory situation here and elsewhere, is we can look at year-over-year change. So how did this inventory pick up to be so high, and how did it finally start to come down? It's basically looking at new pendings versus new listing activities. So I'm going to turn this off, and I'm just going to change this to new pendings. So new pendings are number of contracts during a given month, number of new ratified contracts written during a given month, and compare that to new listing activity. So this is the number of new listings in a given month. Active listings, just so you, and this is in the definitions, but active listings are basically end of period number of active listings over time. So here we can see, so we saw in the previous chart that inventory picked way up in the 2005, 6, 7 time frame. And I'm going to change this to, instead of actual values where this left side is the count of listings or pending activity, so 2,500 all the way to 10,000, you can change this to show the percent change from the previous year, so the year-over-year change. So remember, inventory really started to pick up right around here. Really, the mountain of inventory picked up right in this time frame here. And that's because at that time, contract activity really started to drop. And listing activity, when people started to see the writing on the wall, shot up dramatically. And so when that happens, you get a buildup of active inventory and your months of supply go up, and things just really began to stall. Inventory finally came down off that mountain. We hit the backside of that mountain once we got to the 2008 timeframe. This was after prices were really precipitously falling down, and contract activity picked way up, and listing activity had dropped because people were just saying, I'm not even going to try it at this point. So that finally got the inventory. I'll add active listings in so you can see how that happened. So here we can finally see this is when listing activity finally picked up. Year over year inventory dropped, and we've been sort of on a more stable basis ever since. So understanding that, the dynamics of what happened during the bubble and where we are now, and giving context to, you know, inventory, yeah, we're up from last year, but we're nowhere near, I'm going to just show actual values again, we're nowhere near this level. So, you know, we're not, in a lot of people's opinions, we're nowhere near any sort of bubble type situation. that if you're not comfortable sharing, and I don't do the best job in relaying that information, but that's just more, play around with your local county or zip code just to see if that holds true. We can actually then change this to show the seasonality of prices. This is important information for your buyer or seller. Here we can see when Northern Virginia bottomed out price-wise. Just quickly, I'm going to show you Baltimore Metro to show the difference in the timing of the pricing recovery. So Northern Virginia really bottomed out in the 2009 timeframe, much earlier than the rest of the country, or most markets in the country, whereas Baltimore Metro didn't have as significant of a decrease. If we look at this as change from previous year, we can see that huge decrease in Northern Virginia, whereas Baltimore Metro was a bit more moderate in its pricing correction. Then there was a huge increase in the 2009 timeframe, once housing came roaring back in Northern Virginia because of demand, whereas Baltimore Metro still lingered in the, their pricing bottomed out really in 2011, early 2012, and they've been okay ever since. So this, of late, things have flattened out in Northern Virginia, and that also is not necessarily a bad thing. You don't want to see prices continue to skyrocket double-digit % increases when we're at such a high level already. So the sky's not falling, etc. Just use these charts to get more perspective on that 10-year history and where we've been and where we are likely to head. I've already shown how you can compare locations for median sale prices. I see I'm already 30 minutes into it, so I need to try not to jump as much into the specifics. Pricing ratios. So this is a chart that I recommend using anytime that you're in a pricing conversation with a potential buyer or with a potential seller. Conversely, if you're on the buying side and you're looking at a home that's been on the market for X number of days, and I'll expand on that here in a second. So if we look at this just for some median sold price, and I'll switch this to average sold price to original list price ratio, but median sold price means half the homes that sold got 97.7% of their original list price at closing. The average sold price to original list price, that tends to be shorter or lesser value than the median because the outliers on the low side can tend to skew that down. So we can, again, use this facet bar over here to look at the average sold price to original list price ratio by days on market. So this is saying, this is for all homes, and we're at 96.7%. And we'll switch this to a quarter just to have even more data. And we'll switch this to 1 quarter. So 97.2% is average SP to OLP ratio. Homes that sold in 1 to 10 days, let's see what that looks like. And intuitively this makes sense, but it is important to note that those that were sold in 1 to 10 days in this hot market were sold for 100.1% of original list price on average. As we turn on more of these, so homes that sold in 11 to 20 days, 98.3%, still above the overall average. 21 to 30 days, so inside of a month, 97.0. Keep turning these on, 1 to 2 months, 2 to 3 months, 3 to 4 months, etc. And you can see the steps that tends to happen. Now this is going to be a more pronounced, basically, slide in a hotter market like Northern Virginia. If we switch this to, say, let's go with Southern Maryland. There's 3 counties within Southern Maryland, Calvert, and a few others. And actually, you can see here it's just as pronounced. I do some reports for Charlottesville, and it's not quite as pronounced just because the days on market are much higher there. But how to use this chart, so if we just look at this for Fairfax County, this is a good way to explain to an aggressive seller that thinks they're going to get more for their house than then you've looked at the CMA, you've looked at the comps, et cetera. They're kind of pushing back on your recommendations for a more moderate but reasonable price range. Here's where this is objective. This isn't anecdotal. This is objective, an objective view of what happens as homes stay on the market longer. You'll end up, if this home takes 2 to 3 months, like it could, if you go at this higher price point, you're going to end up not making that money back anyway. So let's, talk something more realistic. Conversely, if you're on the buyer's side and you're going at a home that's been on the market for 120 to 180 days, here it's only a 7% difference. Other places this could be as much as 15% discounted, depending on the zip code you're in. This is a good basis point to start the negotiations with the selling agent to say, look, here's what's happening around here for homes that have been on the market as long as your listing has. Let's start here. So that's the average SP to LP ratio. You can also look at SP to LP, so that's the sold price to most recent list price ratio, and that'll obviously be higher. It doesn't take into account. So these are after any price changes, et cetera. So there's less of a different gap between the two. Days on market, and I'll switch this back and we can look at days on market. Most folks are familiar with days on market, but we have a few new metrics, and I'll show this for 1 year, just looking 4 quarters. So median days on market, 10 days. It was down as low as 10 days in Fairfax County. It's up to 22 days, which is still very low, considering compared to other areas. This means that half the homes that sold in the third quarter were on the market 22 days or less, so about 3 weeks. Half the homes that sold took longer than that. You can switch this to look at the average days on market too. This is going to be higher because it includes those outliers that might have been sitting on the market for a much longer time. Just like with median sale price versus average sale price at RVI, we tend to focus more on the medians than the averages, mostly because of it's not just RVI, this is a lot of other shops. The averages can be so skewed by those outliers, and the median tends to play a mitigating factor in that. New metrics that we have added are, so we can look at the average days on market. We can also look at the average contract to settle. This is great for giving your homeowners, your sellers more context into what to expect in terms of timing. So the average DOM, so that's from listing to contract, was 39 days. The average amount of time that the listings that had a ratified contract sat until final settlement was 41 days. And the final metric that we have, there's median and average for all of these, but is the average days to settle, which is basically the combination, the aggregate of these two, but it's on a listing by listing basis, so it's not going to be an exact sum. So 75 days. So now I can use this to say, look, if you're planning on buying another home, or you need to figure out, what your situation is going to be in, if you have new construction for the next home you're going to, this is about the average amount of time that it's taking overall in this particular county, 75 days. So that helps to plan accordingly. It also helps to benchmark sort of where your listing stands in relation to its quote-unquote peers. An interesting thing and a scary thing to consider for this, and I'm going to go to a wider geography for this. I'll just go to Baltimore. Or let's just do Northern Virginia to help explain this. So the average days to settle in Northern Virginia is 79 days. We can look at these if I turn off and just look at the average contract to settle. So the average amount of time listings are in contract prior to settlement, 42 days. We have a bank-mediated facet here, so the default is all. And so we can look at for non-bank mediated, so that's just a nicer way of saying not distressed. You and your clients might be more familiar with the term distressed or non-distressed. So for non-distressed sales, the average contract to settle is 40 days. Foreclosures, so real estate owned by banks, is 38 days. Banks can't wait to get those off their books, so they're much more, the contract process is comparable to a non-distressed sale. Short sales, on the other hand, 136 days. This is just in the contract phase. So we're talking about 4.5 months-ish is the average amount of time these short sales are staying in contract. So if you have a buyer that's looking at a short sale versus a foreclosure, a standard sale, and she just loves this short sale that's been on the market and wants to go after that, this is good context to say, look, it's not just anecdotal. People have heard the horror stories about dealing with short sales. This is here's a true view of that. 136 days. Are you sure about that? If it is, then I'll stick with you. This is also great. It's great armor against clients that are coming to you saying, why is this taking so long? You aren't doing your job. Get in touch with the bank, et cetera, et cetera. This is good ammunition to say, not in a combative way, but look, this isn't abnormal. Don't bash my brand to all your buddies since it's sitting in there for a while. Or conversely, if you have some in and you know how to get short sales through the pipeline quicker, this is a great way to compare your contract time versus the average overall. Another view that we have that's a bit scary on short sales is it's hidden a bit in and I'm going to switch this to months. It's hidden a bit in our supply and demand. We have a new metric that's called seller success rate, and I'll turn these off for now. So the seller success rate is the percentage of homes, those homes that are in pending status, what's the percentage that successfully close in a given area? So those homes that were in pending during the month, they either stay in pending, in which case they aren't in this calculation, or they move out of pending and they successfully close, or they fall through. They either go back on the market, something happens with the contract, it isn't successfully closed. So only 15% of pendings in Northern Virginia are failing. There's a 15% fail rate. Foreclosures, it's close or about the same. Not distressed, obviously, is going to be pretty good relatively. But short sales, this is another scary thing on short sales. Only 38%. So what's that? 2 out of 5. Basically, 40% are successfully closing. So those that make it through those 130 days in contract, and then ultimately 40% of those are actually closing. 60% are failing. So that's a lot. If you're planning your business around, you can either go the short sale expert path, or, you can, I'm not saying don't pick up short sales. It's obviously up to you, your ethics, et cetera. But short sales can be a tough road to hoe. And it's, this success rate is, rather daunting. So that's a new metric that we have within that. It's 1:41, so I want to leave time for questions if you have any. But the last thing I want to show just on the supply and demand side is months of supply. This is the new metric in RBI Expert. Again, like I said, 4 to 6 months is generally considered balanced. Even though inventory is coming back in Northern Virginia, we're still in a seller's market. I can turn this on to show, and I happen to live in Loudoun, so I pay special attention to this. But for Loudoun County, we can see the months of supply is up at 5.1 months. And this has a direct, for Washington, D.C., which is one of the tightest markets locally and really nationwide for the District of Columbia, they're still at 2.3 months of supply. And what that does is it puts upward pressure on pricing, obviously, and downward pressure on days on market. So if I flip this, remember DC is 2.3 months of supply, Loudoun County is 5.1 months of supply. If we look at the pricing trends, we can see the change from previous year. DC is outpacing somewhat, especially in recent months is outpacing Loudoun in terms of price appreciation, even though they're at record high prices. Another thing to look at this, so I mentioned if you're looking at location by location type of analysis to see where you want to farm, you can use this months of supply to say, you can do that for counties or zip codes near you, or you can also focus on a particular type of home. So this is Northern Virginia, so not a perfect example. You'd be in a zip code or a city. So we can look at detached homes versus townhouses versus condos to see what the hottest market space is in terms of tight inventory and high demand. So detached homes, the higher price points, obviously are pricing some folks out, some potential buyers out of that market. So there's a higher months of supply for detached homes. Attached townhouses, even though they're a bit more expensive than condos, there's more demand, obviously, for townhouses relative to supply than even for condos. And we can look at these trends over time. So over the previous 10 years, say, and we can see townhouses, there didn't used to be as big of a gap between townhouses and detached homes. That gap's widened some as townhouses, as affordabilities come back into play and there's more strict lending standards. But, even this is really remarkable that even for detached homes and the worst of the housing crisis, we still only were at 8.4 months of supply in Northern Virginia. I can tell you that places like in southern Maryland or in Charlottesville, even today in a good market, they're only at 8 months of supply all the way up to 10 months of supply. It's just a slower market. So even today, Northern Virginia is obviously doing well. Baltimore Metro is doing very, very well. The rural areas are doing very well. It's just some places have higher demand than supply than others. I've run out of time. I did want to, if you have a question about embedding, which I didn't get to, let me just see if there are any questions yet. No, it doesn't look like there are any questions. I'm going to go ahead and jump into how to embed. If you don't have a website or don't plan on doing a website, it'll only take me about 5 minutes, but I realize I've run over. I do want to jump into how to embed. So feel free to jump off if you don't have a website and aren't interested in this. Have a great, thanks for joining. If you do have a website, stick with me for one more second. I'll show you how to embed on your website. That's an important part of these charts. So let's say I'm interested in just putting up a basic statistics section, and let's say that I have a website in Loudoun County, where Loudoun is one of my key areas that I focus on. I can jump in. Some of our customers have stats for every single zip code within their market area. That's, the way that this is designed, you can easily set those up, and it's a set it and forget it, and I'll explain that here. So median, let's say we want to do a median sold price chart for Loudoun County and do it for attached townhouses versus detached homes. And we don't want to do a whole 10-year thing. We just want to show the last 6 months of activity over time. So this isn't the best chart in the world to use, but just for explanatory purposes. So I can either download any of this data as an XLS or PDF, or view this as a PNG. Downloading as an XLS is a great way to you can get 10 years worth of data for all these different facets that you've turned on. So you can get price per square foot for 12 different living area square foot ranges, for instance. Download that to Excel. The chart in this space might not look great, but you can download that and use that data from there. Let's see. So embedding. So however I have the chart set up, right now I've got 6 months worth of data, median sold price for detached homes versus attached homes. I I decided now I'm just going to switch this and do median sold price for sales versus median list price for active listings. So to show how some places are overpriced, this area is more overpriced in terms of active inventory versus what's actually selling. And we'll do median list price for new pendings, or median list price for new listings, and median list price for new pendings. Okay, so I've got this chart that I want to show. Click embed. This chart will be updated. I have a website say that my middle section is great for this. We tried to use web standards, so 620 by 330. I can change this if I want to use right rail. I can do 300 by 280. If I have a huge charting, I have a huge space that I can use. I can go extra large here with that. But for now, let's just do large, 620 by 330. The auto update version versus fixed date range version, if I'm a blogger and I just want to put a story around, a narrative around what happened in September, and I don't want that chart to update going forward so that when people are coming back to look at my archived blog entries, I don't want them seeing a chart that's talking about September 2014 data, and the readers coming back and looking at it in January 2016. So it's seeing January 2016 with all this irrelevant content narrative around it. Only in the case of blogging would I do the fixed date range version. Every other time that I can think of, the auto update version works best, because once we get October data, then your chart on your web page is going to have October data. Once we get November data, your chart's going to have November data. It's a set it and forget it kind of thing. So I grab this, for instance, I'll copy and paste this code here. I can either do Control-C or right-click and copy. Then I go to my admin panel. So I have we have an exact site thing just for explanatory purposes. So let's say that I already had this in here, but let's say that I want to put my chart here. So I can, if I'm not a big HTML guy, I can just say put chart here, just to give myself a target. And I switch from design view, and this could be different depending on your CMS. Change this to HTML view. And here we see the ugly HTML and might scare some people off. But so let me find, where did I say put chart here? Okay, it's right here. So I'm going to go ahead and paste, right click and paste, or just hit Control V. So now I've pasted that HTML snippet onto my website. I can switch back to design view to see put chart here. Okay, now I'll check this out. I'm not good at thinking on the fly. So put your spin on what this means or what this chart is about. It helps your SEO to explain exactly what the chart is showing in case people are Googling that. And now I'll just say publish. Publishing this content will overwrite any kind of blah, blah, blah. Actually, I'm just going to do preview, so I don't have to go back and clean it up. So now when I published it, or previewed it in this case, I can see my new chart updated, and as my readers are coming back to my page, they'll see an updated chart. And then you're using your website, you're not doing the share option from RBI. You can actually point your social media, your newsletters, etc., back to your website, and then you are the source for whatever zip codes or counties or subdivisions, etc., that you've used. That's a great way because that's really, I'm not a realtor. Before I was here, I was at AOL and in technology. I didn't get into market stats at all, but everybody out there wants to know about housing market. Every homeowner out there at least wants to know stats, not necessarily tips on how to stage your home, etc. So by having this content published on your website and then pointing links back to your website in your social media campaigns, that's a great way to help increase your brand and get your brand out there as the local expert on market stats. So that's all I've got. Hopefully that made sense to you. I went through it pretty quickly. I know I missed some things. Again, there's the section on the support tab that you can use to look at definitions, and also we post the webinars, so you can watch it on demand. That's all I got. Thanks for joining. Again, if you want to reach me or if you have specific questions that I didn't go over, you can reach me at Corey, C-O-R-E-Y, at rbintel.com. Again, that's Corey at rbintel.com. Thanks for your time today. Look forward to meeting you all. If you ever go to any MBAR type of places, or if you give me a call, we can chat about stats. All right, thanks. Have a great day. Bye-bye.